Step into the Triassic Period, and you'd swear you've picked the worst vacation spot in Earth's catalogue. At first glance, it sounds hopeful. 252 to 201 million years ago, the supposed recovery period after the Permian-Triassic extinction event, also known as the Great Dying. Surely life was rebuilding, stabilizing, moving towards something safer. Wrong. Catastrophically, horrifyingly wrong. Instead of peace, the Triassic was 50 million years of chaos. The supercontinent was ripping itself apart. Volcanoes lit the skies with firestorms, and the atmosphere itself was toxic. Breathing would slowly poison you to death. And dangerous doesn't even begin to cover the creatures that clawed their way out of this biological apocalypse. We're talking about crocodiles the size of buses that walked upright on land, amphibians large enough to swallow cars whole, and the very first dinosaurs, already testing their deadly potential. The oxygen levels during the early Triassic had plummeted to a devastating 12 to 15% of the atmosphere, compared to today's life-sustaining 21%. Even a healthy person would be gasping within minutes. Meanwhile, carbon dioxide soared to 2,000 to 8,000 parts per million, enough to make every breath both suffocating and poisonous. The air itself was hostile, leaving your heart racing, your muscles drained, and your brain shutting down almost instantly. Storm systems raged across the continents, fueled by extreme heat and chemical-laced air. The atmosphere was loaded with volcanic gases like sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, capable of burning your lungs or shutting down your nervous system. Breathing was less survival and more chemical warfare. And the dangers didn't stop there. Ash and dust filled the skies, shredding lungs with microscopic glass and metal particles. Dust storms spanned entire continents, while rain fell as acid, eating through organic tissue on contact. Electrical storms crackled overhead, their supercharged lightning strikes capable of frying anything caught in the open. But the atmosphere was actually the least of your problems. While you were gasping for air and fighting the elements, something far worse was waiting to finish the job. The creatures of the Triassic weren't just survivors, they were predators, forged in chaos, stalking the land with weapons and instincts that made every step outside a gamble with death. Let's start with Postosuchus, the undisputed apex predator of Triassic North America. At 13 feet or 4 meters long and weighing nearly a ton, Postosuchus was built like a biological weapons platform that happened to be related to crocodiles. Unlike modern crocodiles that spend most of their time floating in water looking like logs, Postosuchus was a fully terrestrial predator that walked upright on powerful hind legs and could pursue prey across vast distances without tiring. The skull alone was a masterpiece of predatory engineering, nearly 3 feet or 1 meter long and packed with serrated teeth, designed for both crushing bone and slicing flesh. Postosuchus didn't just bite its prey, it performed precision surgery with weapons-grade dental equipment. Fossil evidence shows these creatures regularly took down prey much larger than themselves, suggesting hunting strategies that involved systematic dismemberment of still-living victims. But Postosuchus was just the tip of the Archosaur iceberg. The Triassic was dominated by an entire family of crocodile relatives that had decided walking upright and terrorizing terrestrial ecosystems was a much better lifestyle than lurking in swamps. Desmatosuchus takes the concept of armored nightmare to its logical extreme. Picture a crocodile crossed with a military tank, scaled up to 16 feet or 5 meters in length and covered in bony armor plates that could deflect the attacks of other apex predators. The name literally means link crocodile, referring to the chainmail-like armor covering its entire body. But that's like calling a nuclear submarine a boat. Technically accurate, but missing the terrifying scope of the actual threat. While it was primarily herbivorous, some researchers have speculated that Desmatosuchus may have been an opportunistic omnivore, occasionally scavenging when the chance presented itself. A 16-foot armored crocodile that could eat plants was already bad enough, but one that would also happily devour anything dead or dying it happened to encounter was a walking ecosystem disaster waiting to happen. And then there's Rauisuchus, South America's entry in the upright crocodiles that will ruin your day category. At 23 feet or 7 meters long and weighing up to 2.5 tons, Rauisuchus was essentially an Allosaurus-sized predator that dominated the land millions of years before Allosaurus ever appeared. This thing pioneered the concept of massive terrestrial apex predator and spent millions of years perfecting techniques that would later be copied by dinosaurs. Rauisuchus possessed something that modern crocodiles lack: the ability to sustain high-speed pursuit over long distances. Its upright posture and powerful leg muscles meant it could chase down prey for miles without the energy limitations that restrict modern crocodiles to short bursts of activity. Being hunted by Rauisuchus was like being pursued by a freight train with teeth that never needed to stop for fuel. But here's what made these archosaur predators truly nightmarish. They were intelligent. Not just smart for reptiles, intelligent, but genuinely problem-solving, strategy-developing, pack-coordinating intelligent. Fossil evidence shows multiple Postosuchus individuals found together in what appear to be coordinated hunting scenarios. The smaller predators were no less terrifying. Saurosuchus, at only 20 feet or 6 meters, was leaner and faster, its skull built for devastating bite force. Unlike the heavier giants, it could chase prey into terrain that slowed its rivals, an apex sprinter armed with bone-crushing jaws. And then came Batrachotomus, perhaps the most lethal balance of all. Also reaching 20 feet, it combined size, speed, and versatility in ways its bulkier relatives couldn't. Its teeth showed constant wear patterns consistent with regular bone crushing, suggesting these creatures spent a fair share of its time systematically dismantling anything it could catch, as if tearing creatures apart was less about survival and more about a hobby. This was the Triassic's master predator, equally at home chasing the swift or standing its ground against giants. And here's the truly unsettling part about Triassic archosaurs. They occupied every possible ecological niche. The fossil record paints a picture of landscapes absolutely dominated by these archosaur nightmares. In some Triassic formations, archosaur fossils make up over 60% of all large predator remains, a percentage that indicates an ecosystem where being hunted wasn't an occasional danger, but the fundamental organizing principle of daily life. You weren't just dealing with one or two apex predators. You were surrounded by an entire civilization of creatures whose purpose was turning other living things into food. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the simple fact that these archosaurs were successful for tens of millions of years. These creatures were the absolute rulers of Triassic terrestrial ecosystems, perfectly adapted to their environment and utterly dominant over every other form of life, until something even worse came along. Smaller, faster, and unnervingly clever, creatures that would one day become the most successful predators in Earth's history. The first dinosaurs were stepping onto the Triassic stage, and even in their primitive, harmless forms, they carried what their rivals lacked: potential. Let's start with Catastrophically, one of the earliest and most harmless dinosaurs in the fossil record. At 10 feet or 3 meters long and weighing around 60 pounds or 27 kilograms, Catastrophically might seem almost manageable compared to the bus-sized archosaurs we've been discussing. That comforting thought will last exactly until you realize that Catastrophically never hunted alone, possessed razor-sharp claws on both hands and feet, and had the pack coordination skills of wolves combined with the relentless persistence of African wild dogs. Fossil evidence from Ghost Ranch in New Mexico shows hundreds of Catastrophically individuals preserved together. Not just family groups, but massive congregations that suggest complex social behaviors and coordinated hunting strategies. Picture being surrounded by 200 individual predators, each one fast enough to outrun a human, smart enough to coordinate attacks, and equipped with natural weapons specifically designed for disemboweling prey. Even if each individual coelophysis was relatively small, the collective threat was like being attacked by a school of prehistoric piranhas that could chase you onto dry land. The nightmare wasn't just that coelophysis hunted, it was that it hunted itself. Fossil specimens have been found with the remains of smaller coelophysis individuals in their stomachs. When a creature is willing to hunt and devour its own species, you can be absolutely certain it won't have any moral qualms about making you into lunch. The cannibalistic behavior also suggests a level of desperation and aggression that made these early dinosaurs incredibly dangerous to anything smaller than themselves, which, in this case, fairly points to you. Herrerasaurus takes the small early dinosaur concept and scales it up to genuinely terrifying proportions. At 20 feet or 6 meters long and weighing up to 770 pounds or 350 kilograms, it was built for speed and predation. Its lightweight but muscular frame likely allowed it to hit speeds around 40 miles per hour or 64 kilometers per hour, fast enough to chase down most Triassic creatures with ease. The skull of Herrerasaurus was a masterpiece of predatory engineering. Long, narrow, and packed with recurved teeth that were perfect for grabbing prey and preventing escape. Herrerasaurus could open its mouth wider than most other predators, allowing it to deliver devastating bites to much larger prey. Unlike later dinosaurs that developed reduced arm size, Herrerasaurus possessed powerful, grasping arms with large claws that could be used to hold struggling prey, while those devastating jaws went to work. And then there's Eoraptor, whose name means dawn thief. At 6 feet or 1.8 meters long and weighing around 22 pounds or 10 kilograms, Eoraptor might seem almost cute compared to its larger relatives. This illusion would last exactly until you noticed its hands. Eoraptor possessed some of the most sophisticated grasping hands in the early dinosaur fossil record. 5-fingered appendages with sharp claws, an effective adaptation for capturing and holding small prey. While not as specialized as later theropods, these hands gave it an edge in seizing insects, reptiles, and other quick-moving animals, making it one of the earliest dinosaurs to show the predatory features that would later define the group. Styracosaurus, another early dinosaur from South America, shows evidence of complex territorial behaviors and what appears to be rudimentary communication systems. At 7 feet or 2.1 meters long, Styracosaurus was small enough to hide in dense vegetation, but smart enough to coordinate attacks with other individuals. The fossil record suggests these early dinosaurs were developing hunting strategies that wouldn't be seen again until the rise of modern social predators millions of years later. They could work together to drive prey into ambushes, take turns pursuing exhausted victims, and coordinate attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. Within just a few million years, they had developed from small, relatively simple predators into increasingly sophisticated and specialized killing machines. The fossil record shows clear trends toward larger size, improved weaponry, enhanced speed, and more complex social behaviors. Early dinosaurs weren't just surviving in Triassic ecosystems, they were adapting to dominate them, which inevitably meant becoming better at killing anything that might compete with them for resources. But while these early dinosaurs were busy sharpening into future nightmares, they weren't the only creatures making the Triassic landscape dangerous. Some of the most terrifying inhabitants of this period were survivors from earlier ages, ancient lineages that had survived the Great Dying and emerged from that extinction event bigger, angrier, and infinitely more dangerous than they had been before. Let's begin with Mastodonsaurus. At 20 feet or 6 meters long and weighing over 2 tons, Mastodonsaurus was equipped with jaws that could snap a small car in half and a temperament that made honey badgers seem reasonable. The skull alone was a 4-foot or 1.2 meter long nightmare of bone and teeth, with eye sockets the size of dinner plates and a mouth that could open wide enough to swallow a human whole without even chewing. Mastodonsaurus didn't hunt. It simply waited in shallow water, looking like a floating log until something came close enough to drink. Then those massive jaws would explode out of the water with enough force to crush a rhinoceros. As an amphibian, it could breathe air and water, thriving in environments that would have suffocated most other predators. Rivers, swamps, even shallow rain-fed pools became death traps, patrolled by a creature that had spent hundreds of millions of years perfecting the art of the ambush. Cyclotosaurus takes the giant amphibian concept and adds the nightmare element of pack hunting. At 16 feet or 5 meters long, individual Cyclotosaurus was smaller than Mastodonsaurus, but made up for it by hunting in coordinated groups. Fossil evidence shows multiple individuals preserved together in what appear to be cooperative hunting scenarios, suggesting these creatures had developed social behaviors specifically designed to take down prey much larger than themselves. But the truly nightmarish survivors weren't limited to land and freshwater environments. The oceans had their own collection of post-extinction terrors that had used the Great Dying as an opportunity to grow to absolutely ridiculous proportions. Let's dive right into the nightmare with Temnodontosaurus, an ichthyosaur that stretched up to 40 feet or 12 meters of pure oceanic predation. Picture a creature with the body plan of a modern sperm whale, the speed of a dolphin, and the feeding habits of a great white shark, scaled up to absolutely ridiculous proportions. Temnodontosaurus possessed the largest eyes of any known vertebrate, over 10 inches or 25 centimeters in diameter, which provided vision so acute it could spot prey from miles away, even in murky Triassic waters. Those massive eyes weren't just for show. They gave Temnodontosaurus the ability to hunt in near darkness, whether in the low-light depths of the ocean or in the murky, particle-heavy waters churned up by constant volcanic activity. When a 40-foot predator can see you long before you can see it, the concept of oceanic safety becomes purely theoretical. But Temnodontosaurus was just the opening act in the Triassic marine horror show. The real nightmare was Leedsichthys. And before you get comfortable thinking about a large fish, remember that Leedsichthys reached lengths of up to 54 feet or 16.5 meters and possessed a mouth large enough to accidentally inhale entire schools of smaller creatures. While primarily a filter feeder, accidentally inhale is the key phrase here. Leedsichthys didn't need to be actively hunting you to turn you into lunch. The feeding mechanism of creatures this size created suction forces that could pull in anything within a 50-foot radius. Swimming anywhere near a feeding Leedsichthys would be like being caught in an underwater tornado specifically designed to funnel organic matter into a biological processing plant. You wouldn't be eaten, you'd be processed as part of the regular business operations of staying alive. Shastasaurus represents the ultimate expression of bigger is better philosophy among marine reptiles, reaching lengths of up to 69 feet or 21 meters, making it potentially the largest marine reptile that ever lived. At nearly 70 feet long, Shastasaurus was longer than most modern blue whales and possessed a body plan optimized for high-speed pursuit in open ocean. Unlike filter-feeding whales, Shastasaurus was equipped with a mouthful of sharp teeth and the swimming capability to chase down virtually anything in Triassic seas. Being pursued by Shastasaurus would be like being hunted by a living torpedo the size of a city block, capable of maintaining pursuit speeds that would make escape impossible for anything smaller than another giant marine reptile. Cymbospondylus, while smaller at 33 feet or 10 meters, was arguably more terrifying due to its specialized hunting adaptations. This early ichthyosaur possessed forward-facing eyes that provided stereoscopic vision, the same adaptation that makes modern predators like cats and hawks so effective at judging distances for precision attacks. A 33-foot marine predator with depth perception and the swimming speed of a dolphin was essentially an underwater guided missile programmed to turn anything edible into bite-sized chunks. The smaller marine survivors were often more disturbing than the giants. Mixosaurus at 6 feet or 1.8 meters long, was built like a prehistoric shark, crossed with a dolphin and equipped with the intelligence to use coordinated hunting strategies. Fossil evidence suggests these creatures hunted in pods and possessed echolocation abilities similar to modern toothed whales, meaning they could track prey in complete darkness or murky water with sonar precision. The marine crocodile relatives were equally disturbing. Metriorhynchus was a fully aquatic predator, with flippers instead of legs and a tail fin like a shark. At 10 feet or 3 meters long, Metriorhynchus combined the patience and explosive attack power of modern crocodiles with the swimming ability of marine predators. It was essentially a crocodile that could pursue prey indefinitely through open ocean, the worst possible combination of ambush predation and pursuit hunting. But perhaps most unsettling of all were the microscopic horrors that made even touching Triassic seawater dangerous. Conodonts, tiny eel-like creatures with sophisticated jaw mechanisms, existed in massive swarms that could strip flesh from bone in minutes. While individually microscopic, conodont swarms could contain millions of individuals working together like underwater piranha clouds. Swimming through a conodont swarm would be like being sandblasted by millions of tiny, highly efficient organic razors. The individual bites would be nearly microscopic, but the cumulative effect of millions of simultaneous attacks would result in rapid exsanguination and tissue destruction. You wouldn't be eaten by a large predator. You'd be methodically disassembled by a cloud of microscopic predators working with industrial efficiency. Here's the inescapable truth about the Triassic period. It wasn't just dangerous in the way that other prehistoric eras were dangerous. It was systematically, comprehensively, and innovatively lethal in ways that created a perfect storm of extinction-level threats specifically designed to eliminate anything that resembled modern life. This wasn't just a hostile environment, it was a 50 million year-long stress test for the fundamental concept of survival itself. So, could you actually survive the Triassic? Or would you turn the page to the next chapter of prehistory and gamble your chances in the Cretaceous instead? This is Roaring Echo. Thank you for watching.